Okay, so we've got a J-League match here between ThinkLauren and ditastrutt. I believe the current standings for these two are Dita is 4th and ThinkLauren is 3rd, so this could be a significant match for standings. And I've got kHz here, co-commentating.
Yeah, and it looks like they will be playing with expansions, so
Nice.
that is nice.
And they're playing rated. So
Oh, wow.
rating is on the line in addition to your league standings here. So what have we got
And with
here?
no ban lists.
Yeah, that's bold.
They are just going in completely unprotected.
So we've got a slew of villages: Walled Village, Hostelry, Wandering Minstrel, and Bustling Village hiding underneath those settlers.
Plenty of village. One draw card to make use of it.
Yeah, the only draw, though, is... only reliable draw is Werewolf. Theoretically, Settlers and Bustling Village can draw if it picks up a copper or a Settlers from the discard pile. But I'm not seeing a particularly reliable way to set that up.
Yeah, there's no way to discard from your hand on purpose, at least. You can get hexed, I suppose.
You could use, Wandering Minstrel to get the coppers into the discard, and then use Settlers to pick them up. There's no way to discard the Settlers.
Yeah. And Werewolf is fine draw. It's a smithy.
Yeah.
Looks like they have spec chat on.
Yeah. And now
thank God we can turn it off these days, and it looks like it's off now.
Yep. So I'm not seeing any plus buy either, which makes me think Vampire is pretty significant here. Because it's the only way to gain cards. And Amulet can gain silvers, but the only way to gain things that are not silver.
So a couple of things have already happened. One was ditastrutt bought a hostelry for $4. So there's a couple things that I want to point out about that. First off, something we talk about a lot, which is you really don't want to open a village. When you don't have any terminals to play, opening a village doesn't really do anything. It's just basically a card that cycles itself in your deck. It's almost like it wasn't there. And we also saw gold being bought over Vampire, which seems fanatically wrong.
Yes. So I definitely like ThinkLauren's opening a lot more than Dita's. The Hostelry is obviously doing nothing for you. It's also worth noting that of the 3 villages, Hostelry is just clearly the worst if you buy it for 4. Hostelry has the potential to be a phenomenal village if you use the little gain horses effect in the right contexts. But once it's in your deck, it's no different than just a vanilla plain village. Whereas at least Walled Village and Wandering Minstrel have some bonus for you. And so they bought
Minstrel is a significant bonus. Walled Village is only a little better than a regular village, but Minstrel is miles ahead of a village.
Yeah, that is a good point. Walled Village is ever so marginally better than Hostelry. Minstrel is just way better than those two. So Hostelry is just, I think a very questionable buy. Silver is fine. Because you really want to hit 5 here early to get Vampire, and Silver can help you do that. But I think it's inferior to what ThinkLauren is doing. Because Bounty Hunter is excellent at both hitting 5 and getting you thin, which is a nice combination. Yep. And then Amulet as well is pretty flexible in that regard.
Yeah, so we see they have Dita has a bunch of villages, but no actual terminals that they need villages for. So a lot of this build order just feels a bit backwards. I think Vampire is your first 5 by far, because you'd like to use it to gain werewolves, to gain groundskeepers, to gain covens if you want to go the cursing route.
Yeah.
And it also thins you while it's your gainer.
Yeah.
So it kind of does everything.
There's certainly a lot to unpack here. Just to expand what you're saying with these villages, if you don't have, say, Werewolf, for example, Werewolf and Amulet are the 2 terminal action cards here, the ones that cost action to play. If you don't have those in your deck, these villages that help you play extra actions are doing literally nothing for you. And so the way I see it, it's basically ditastrutt past turn 2, and then past turn 3, and then past turn 4, and then they bought a silver turn 5, and they bought a Vampire. So they basically passed 3 straight turns in the middle there, because those villages are doing literally nothing to improve your deck, which is a really significant setback. Now, coming back to this thing you pointed out briefly a second ago, ThinkLauren buying gold. I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. Really, really dislike that. Can't stress enough how much I dislike buying golds just in general and in this kingdom in particular. there's a lot
Golds are sort of a last resort.
Yeah.
When you need payload and there's no other cards that are going to get you payload, gold becomes like a reasonable thing to buy. Certainly, we don't mean to suggest you should never buy gold.
We might.
All right.
It's pretty close.
There are situations where you want to buy gold, especially when you're a bit of a lower level player and you can't. Oh, wow, they are provincing.
Oh, yeah.
But here you have other things that can... You have Amulet, which can generate silvers, which are almost as good as golds. You know, they're only a coin less. Okay, we're buying duchies. And you have Coven, which also generates 2 coins, but curses your opponent, which is a very strong effect.
Yeah.
So there's lots of good stuff to buy that is not gold or duchy. Okay.
There's so much going on here. I don't think we've even finished unpacking the problems with the gold buy, even.
No.
So obviously there's this general problem, which is why you almost never buy gold, which is just that it's a weak card that costs more than almost every other card. And so if you could be buying gold, you could probably be buying Vampire, or Werewolf, or Groundskeeper, or Coven, all of which are just phenomenally better cards. And so just almost always there's just a better card worth buying. Even Training, for example, costs 6 and is better than gold. But secondly, I think there's another problem specific to this kingdom, which is we said that you're limited on gains. Right, there's no plus buy here at all, and so every buy you make has to count. You're looking to economize and I want my deck up and running in as few buys as possible, and so that signifies 2 things, both of which count against buying gold. Firstly, you don't need a whole lot of money. The most money you could ever possibly need to have in your deck is 8, because there's nothing more expensive than 8, and you can't buy more than one thing. And then secondly is there's other ways here to get money that also do other things for you. For example, you could buy a singular amulet and then gain 4 silvers off of it. And then you have 8 money in your deck now, but you only spent 1 buy on that amulet. Or you could buy a Coven, which also gives you the ability to curse your opponents. And it's doing a lot for you. Using a buy, spending one of those precious buys on a buy limited kingdom on a gold is sort of throwing away a turn, because there's ways to get money into your deck that are either doubling up on that, or they're not spending buy in the first place, like buying a singular amulet and getting 4 silvers, or buying a singular vampire and gaining 4 coven. Something like that is a much better way to get money in your deck.
Yep. So let's try and talk about these early duchies. So certainly those seem incredibly suspect to a high-level player. And it kind of goes against the general greening strategy, which is that you want to buy provinces. Every green card you add to your deck slows your deck down. So you want to add as few green cards to your deck as possible while still winning.
Yeah.
So we start off, we try to get the most efficient points possible. So we really want to build a deck that can buy provinces. And then when points are starting to matter because we're running out of provinces to buy and the points are getting close, then we trickle down into the duchies. And when duchies even start to run, or you can't even buy a duchy, then you can desperation start buying some estates. But certainly there's no reason on a board like this to start picking up duchies before provinces are almost gone.
Yeah. A card that I think influences this very significantly here is Groundskeeper. And this is just part of a broader idea in Dominion strategy, which is if you have alternative sources of victory points, like Groundskeeper, for example, especially strong ones, and Groundskeeper is a relatively strong one, that even further pushes you towards wait much longer to green, right? Because almost always greening early tends to be a bad idea more often than not. But if you're evergreening early, it's often just because the kingdom's weak and you just kind of want to get a lead on the provinces early, and occasionally that's the right move. But if there's another source of victory points around other than just buying provinces, then it's almost always going to be better to keep building, build longer, and then that even if you get behind on provinces, you can just outscore them with your alternative stack of victory points. For example, if my opponent buys provinces and duchies, and then I get ult into the Groundskeepers, now I'm going to be buying 11-point estates, which score a lot more than province and duchies in the long run.
And hopefully using Vampire to gain some more green cards to really rack up those Groundkeeper points. But you need to build a deck that has a lot of Groundkeepers and can draw them in order to make that a thing.
Yeah. Now, another thing we're seeing, we touched on this in the beginning, but I think Ditta's current hand is very emblematic of this. These villages are doing absolutely nothing in this hand, right? It's functionally like those cards just aren't even there. Like, they had a 5-card hand that had 3 villages in it. They've played it. Now they're just a different 5-card hand. And they're no better or worse. They have 5 actions, but they only had 1 action card that they wanted to play, the amulet. So those villages didn't help them. The card that I think is really significant here in this kingdom is Werewolf, just because it's the only source of draw, and you really want to draw. And the reason you'd be getting villages here, when you should eventually, is because you've got werewolves in your deck and you want to play a lot of them to draw your cards. And they're not touching werewolf in the slightest.
Team OK, I think vampire is certainly like also the most important card, but at a high level, you know, the simplest deck you could build here that could win is probably like werewolf money. And that's not a good deck, but recognizing that like there is draw, starting to go for draw, and then adding that and improving your engine is like the first step here. So in a certain sense, werewolf is like the biggest card to notice on the board because it's literally the only draw on the board.
Yeah, I guess to be fair, both of those are very significant cards. Werewolf is super significant here because it's the only draw, and then Vampire is super significant because it's the only gains.
Yeah.
That's not like general commentary on Werewolf, like, oh my god, Werewolf's the best card ever. It's just that if there's no other draw, and Werewolf is draw, in this kingdom it becomes super significant.
Well, very fast game.
Yeah, I think these players could do to like think a little bit more about their moves. They were really blitzing through it, and
Think, Lauren, think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in the name.
Slow down, think.
Her name is a cautionary tale that she's not heeding. Yeah, I think
that game took 18 turns.
Yeah, that's the problem is not even so much the turn count as what they were doing with the turns. Like, that game should have lasted a long time for a very different reason. This lasted long because they didn't build very efficiently. It should have lasted long because you want to take the path that gets you lots of groundskeepers and score slowly over a long time with estates and so forth. And they weren't really doing that. In general, in Dominion, if you can construct a deck that like functions as an engine, one that draws your entire deck every turn and plays itself, that's almost always going to be the dominant strategy. And that was definitely possible here. You had the villages, you had the gains, you had the draw. And neither player... Trashing. Yeah, and trashing. Bat trashes and Amulet and Bounty Hunter. And neither player really even attempted to do that. They didn't add a single draw card to the deck that entire game. And then they just like blitzed out the provinces and duchies as quickly as they could.
Whoa, that's treasure map open.
Oh goodness! I'm not done explaining what was wrong in the previous game. Stop making mistakes.
This is gonna be difficult.
Yeah.
Okay,
right, let's
here
go to this game.
I absolutely want to open Catapult first of all.
Yeah. I would think Catapult, I don't see Silver, anything, or Catapult.
Yeah, I don't see anything great to pair it with, so probably with Silver. In general, if you don't have a particularly strong card to pair a terminal with, just adding a Silver is often like the basis for a pretty good opening. Yeah. But okay, let's talk about Treasure Map. So Treasure Map is one of those cards that you might think, I just want to get them early, and then if I pop them, I'll sort of have a bunch of gold, and that'll win me the game or something. But it doesn't really work like that. The best way to use Treasure Map is once you can already draw your whole deck, then you can add some Treasure Maps in as a way to get some payload. Yeah.
There's a few problems. The first is, every one of these turns, and we see this here, like where Dita's got a Treasure Map and doesn't have a second one, it's actively harmful to your deck. It's like you've added another junk card to your deck. This could have been a nice 5-card hand. Maybe you have 5 coppers and buy a Wharf or something like that. Or maybe if they bought Silver, they could buy an Artisan even. That'd be great. The Treasure Map is like junking their deck up and making it worse off the off chance of lining them up. And then the second problem is, like, even if you line them up, gold is just not that good of a card. Adding 4 golds to your deck is very much the antithesis of what you want to be doing early on in the game. This goes back to the thing I was just saying, actually, like the last comment I was making about the previous game, is your like overarching strategy towards the kingdom should almost always be, how do I get control of my deck? I want to make sure I can draw my whole deck consistently and reliably. And adding a bunch more stop cards, cards that don't draw you cards, like gold doesn't, it makes your deck thicker. It's more full of junk cards, which makes it harder to draw consistently. And so if you add a bunch of those cards, you're never really going to get control of your deck.
Yeah, even if the Treasure Map strategy worked, even if somehow you managed to get 2 Treasure Maps into your deck really fast and they collided. Oh, okay, there's Fountain, so I guess that kind of explains that. But even if those Treasure Maps collide really nice and early and you get those golds, your deck is going to lose if all you do is shove a couple golds in and then start buying provinces. The deck's just going to stall out, and there's much better things to do here.
Yeah.
It's a very strong board in terms of you have Haggler for an Artisan for gains. Market gives you plus buy. Catapult will, destroy a money deck by causing it to screech to a halt. Wharf is excellent draw. You have a great village. This board has everything you need for a good old-fashioned engine.
Yes. Now, incidentally, we did see a werewolf bot this game, but this is actually not the kingdom where you want to buy werewolf.
I don't think I ever touch werewolf here.
Yeah, we wanted to buy werewolf last game because it was the only draw. But realistically, werewolf is just Smithy for $5. Smithy for $5 is often totally fine. Smithy can be a $5 value card. But it's sitting right next to what is, I think, the strongest $5 draw card in the game,
I
Wharf.
would agree.
Which is just, it's much, much better. It's drawing you 4 cards per play of Wharf. It's also giving you plus buy. And it's also drawing you cards at the start of your next turn. And start of turn draw is like the best time to be drawing cards, because it significantly reduces the chance that you dud. Like, oh no, my starting hand didn't have the village and the draw card I needed to kick it off. Well, if you got like 7 or 9 cards in your hand instead of 5, you're much more likely to line up that initial combination of cards that then gets your deck rolling. And so here, I wouldn't be buying Werewolf just because it really pales in comparison to Wharf as far as draw cards go. Wandering Minstrels at 9 is also kind of a travesty.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, like, they don't actually have that many terminal actions in their deck to justify wanting the villages, but they should, and then they should also have the villages.
So they've gotten their treasure maps popped. They now have some golds kind of clogging up their deck. But is their deck significantly better? Is it actually poised to take a bunch of provinces?
No. Yeah, I'm not a fan of these builds, which is very unwieldy.
So a really simple general build might be you start off by adding trashing and some draw. Here that would be Catapult and Wharf. Add in some villages once you have some terminals so that you can play all your terminals. Once your deck is starting to get into good shape and you're generating a lot of money every turn, you want to add plus buy-in. So that would be Market here.
Well, Wharf already gives you plus buy. I actually think Market's not a high
totally
priority.
Right. Yep. Okay. I don't know how. I'm dumbing myself down too much to the point where I've forgotten what Wharf does. So yeah, you don't really need to touch Market. You have Wharf, which is draw and plus buy, and it's really good at both of those things. And then you can start adding artisans and hagglers and stuff to really get some extra gains going, really make your engine be able to ramp up because you're able to gain 3 or 4 cards in a turn.
Yeah.
And then once you've got your deck under control, you're starting to add some payload, which, could be golds. Once you get your deck under control, there's no reason that you can't grab some treasure maps and pop them. But they're doing everything kind of backwards.
Yeah. I think this is actually a very good kingdom to practice just like building a good engine on, because I think you're right that this has a pretty straightforward build to it. There's some kingdoms that are really complicated and you got weird sort of roundabout ways to get the deck going. This one I think is very linear. You got a nice cheap trasher Catapult that you can open with early to get thin. Then you can buy draw cards when you hit 5. You can add villages when you hit 4. And then eventually you're going to want to add some gainers. Haggler and Artisan are both great ways to gain cards. And then you should be able to sort of consistently add a few more payload cards, add a few more draw cards to cover that, and keep your deck under control. I would think kind of an important thing here would be to eventually, and again, you don't want to rush this because buying villages early is bad, but eventually have a majority of the Wandering Minstrels, because there's a lot of really good action cards here that are terminal. Artisan, Haggler, Wharf, and even Werewolf would not be bad if Wharfs ran out. And the number of those cards you can play will be contingent on how many villages you have. In this kingdom, you've got only 1 stack of villages instead of 4, and so here, clicking Wandering Minstrel is a higher priority than it was in the last kingdom. Yeah.
And something else, you might be a little afraid, they're going to start getting provinces while I'm still building. Aren't they going to just outscore me? So, on certain kingdoms, that is true, that the engine is too slow and money is just the thing to do. But on a kingdom like this, just the fact that there's a card like Catapult, which you can open, it trashes, and it attacks their hand size, means that the money deck that just buys basically money cards and maybe a little bit of draw is going to have a really hard time closing out a game when it's getting attacked by a hand size attack and possibly a curse as well every turn. And that's what an engine can do, is it can get its deck under control and then it can play that attack consistently against its opponent.
Yeah, like if my opponent is like buying treasure maps instead of building an engine, I'm probably not even going to think about greening until I've just acquired like all the wharfs and all the wandering minstrels and have a really big deck. And even if they got 5 provinces early on, I know I'm going to take like 3 provinces and all the duchies very easily and come back in the long term. And they're like, once that deck gets running, they're going to have a really hard time greening because I'm going to be playing like a catapult and trashing like a silver every turn to both hand size attack them and curse them.
And there's even Fountain for, a deck that can generate a lot of buys. Fountain's often just totally not worth going for. But here, if you are building a slower engine, not the engine's slow here, but let's say it's just taking you some time to build your engine and the opponent is sort of rushing provinces, Fountain is a big stack of VP that you can score with all your extra buys that can let you, even things up against the engine. So there's even some alt VP here to further push you towards building.
Yeah, not even just buys, but gains as well. Like if you play let's say you've played like 4 wharfs and a haggler, you could easily gain 10 coppers. You just buy 4 provinces and a duchy using your 5 buys, and then gain 10 coppers with a haggler effect off of that.
Okay, so let's just quickly talk about the penultimate province rule since Dita just broke it.
Uh-oh.
So the game ends when the last province gets taken. So if you and your opponent are within a province's score of each other, you can't safely take the second to last province because they can just grab the last one, and it doesn't matter if they're only beating you by a point now, they just won the whole game. So when you get down to 2 provinces, you often have to switch to buying duchies because you want to still increase your score and try to edge out your opponent. But if you were to buy the second to last province, you'd be opening yourself up to a win, which is what just happened here.
Yep. Basically, if the game ends on your opponent's turn, they've had one more turn to score than if it ends on your turn. And so you never, if you can help it, want to give them the opportunity to end the game on their turn. And so, at least in a simple money kingdom, like they were playing this kingdom, that usually means if the score is close, don't touch the second to last province. Now, once your decks get bigger, that penultimate province rule starts to just become like the 3 province rule, or the 4 province rule, or whatever. Where, like, let's say both of these decks have enough money to hit 2 provinces per turn. Like, you've got a deck that's strong enough to hit 16. Mm-hmm. Now, all of a sudden, it's the third to last province you don't want to touch, instead of the second to last one. Because if you take the third to last province, your opponent can buy the last 2, and then in the game there. And so you want to, like, dance around the third province, and so forth. Like, I recall, actually, I was playing a game the other day versus N.A. Smith, where it was the 5th to last province. I was like, shoot, there's 5 provinces left in the pile, but I can't touch the 5th to last province, because I know his deck can do 4 provinces. And so yeah. I took, like 3 duchies and 3, farmlands, and then waited to win on the next turn.
Yeah, I played a governor game today where both of us could take 4 provinces, and it turned into us kind of dancing around each other for a while. Because no one wanted to take like just 2 or 3.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a very spicy board.
This looks painful.
A lot going on here. Torturer, great attack. It's a smithy. It's an attack. It's what's not to love. You've got Swindler, which is what, in fact, is not to love.
I hate Swindler. It's the worst card.
I hate Swindler.
It's so
like
terrible.
My least favorite card in the game.
Please ban. They don't even have ban lists. Please use your ban list wisely. Get rid of cards like this. It's a miserable card to play with.
But it's certainly a strong attack that can do a lot to mess with your opponent. It can effectively be a cursor early on in the game. Well, Swindler matters if it takes out curses from the pile, because Torture gets a lot worse when there's an alternative cursor.
Imagine your Torturer getting turned into a cash, and you've got 3 more junk cards in your deck, and they turn your mining villages into moneylenders. But then you've got a nice cash moneylender combo.
Yeah. So the engine here can do a lot. You have Inventor for payload. And in general, you just have a lot of really strong cards to gain. So it's kind of cool that they've rolled like 3 very engine-y boards in a row.
Yep. I think Moat's going to be a pretty good card here.
Oh, yeah. There's so many attacks. I mean, there's only 2, but they can get multiplied so much between Mastermind, Torture stacks on its own, Inventor can change price ranges a bit for Swindler. Like, it can get ugly.
So let's talk about the opening, because I actually don't particularly like either of their openings. ThinkLauren opens Torturer, Copper. Torturer, great.
Copper.
I think Torturer is very, very much on point. Torturer is a very strong card. It's draw, which does help you a lot early, and it attacks them, which hurts them a lot early. Good card to open with. The Copper, though, I mean, it's Copper.
So it came with 2 points,
yeah.
But you gotta think, first, that's essentially like you added a green card to your deck. So do you, under the same idea that you want to build for a while until your deck can really start taking green consistently, do you want to do the opposite of building on your first turn?
No. Like, a good way to think about this is, like, if someone were to offer me, like, hey, turn 1, Province costs 0, and you can buy Province turn 1 if you want to. That would almost always be a bad play. Like, you would not take a free Province into your deck as your buy. And this is like buying, like, somewhere like between like a duchy and an estate, and 2 points worth. Early game victory points matter next to none. Because that sort of snowball effect, like your early buys will influence what you get to buy turn 3 and turn 4, which then influences what you get to buy turn 5 and turn 6. And did I miss something of significance while I was complaining about things?
They had Captain, Mastermind, and Moat in hand, and they played Captain as Moneylender. So if you played Captain as a village there, you could play your other 2 cards.
That's a very good
point. And getting a Mastermind down is a really great thing, especially when you have a Captain coming in, because you can use that Captain to draw some cards, still be at the start of your turn, and then play a Mastermind on one of the cards you drew.
To be fair, I'm actually not even sure they have enough action cards in their deck to have had a good target for that Mastermind.
That is fair.
But yeah, so back to the previous point. Victory points early are just so insignificant compared to the long-term effect of just like a marginal edge. Like if your deck is just slightly better in the beginning, that spills over to future turns and so forth. And so you want to do whatever maximizes the quality of your deck, not the amount of points you have. And so I would just ignore Basilica for those purposes.
Yeah, a lot of these landmarks come down to, it's nice if you get them while you're doing what you wanted to do anyway, but most of the time you don't want to divert from building the best deck you can just for a couple of points, especially pretty early on. So there, I think you want to play Moneylender over Swindler since you knew the Swindler was going to get blocked.
Yeah, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. They basically just added a free Copper. You already had the Torture blocked with Moat, so you knew Swindler was just going to give you 2 coins. Moneylender is functionally like plus 2 coins. You know, it says plus 3, but it's also removing a Copper from your hand. So in effect, Moneylender is giving you 2 more coins than otherwise. So the difference between playing Moneylender and Swindler is you just got 2 coins either way, but failed to trash a Copper. And obviously you don't want Coppers in your deck. So I like the Captain and I like the Mastermind. Reason why is those are both villages. And one of the things that ThinkLauren's deck is struggling with right now is a lack of villages. And they got tons of terminals. Yep. So every turn we're seeing them all collide in their hand, and they can't play all their action cards. And it's because they don't have enough villages, and they don't have a way to play them all. Mining Village would be a good card to have here. Captain would be great because you can play Captain as Mining Village. Mastermind is great because it functions like a village. It lets you play additional action cards and so on and so forth. And don't think that because we were talking about like don't buy villages in the open and the village is a bad card. It's just that once you've got multiple action cards, like a Torture and a Swindler in your deck, that's the time you want to start adding villages. So now that ThinkLauren's got a bajillion action cards in the deck, now would be a great time to add villages.
Yeah, so they just masterminded a mining village, which makes some sense, right? You want to get a bunch of actions so that you can play your terminals, but masterminding a Torture is just so much better. I mean, you're drawing 9 cards, you're attacking them 3 times, and all that happens non-terminally, so then you can still play your mining village and then play your Captain afterwards.
Yeah, that'd be so painful getting attacked 3 times with Torture. And it's not like ditastrutt has the same problem that ThinkLauren does, where ThinkLauren's got a ton of terminal action cards and maybe needs a lot of villages. Dita's deck doesn't actually have all that many action cards, and so it's not like they needed that many plus action anyway. That province is way too early.
Yeah. So let's talk about maybe what we would have bought instead of a province there. So you get this big old hand, you drew a bunch of stuff, your cards came together, and you got a lot of money. You don't have to spend it all.
Yes. I would click Captain without a second thought. The thing that I'm thinking about with Dita is my deck's starting to come together, and I want to be adding more cards per turn right now. I don't want to just be adding one card per turn, because that's slow. And the card here that gains you additional cards is Inventor. I can use my Inventors to gain additional mining villages. If you play more than one Inventor per turn, the second and third Inventor can start gaining you Torturers and then Captains. And so you could just buy Inventor. But there's a nice card here, Captain, that plays you an Inventor with a bonus next turn. And so if my goal is to play Inventors, I might as well just buy the Captain, which is like Inventor but better.
Yep, and Captains are even nice because once you've played one Inventor, then your second Captain can be a Mastermind. No, it can't because that's duration, but it can be a Torture.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Dita bought Cash? Cash ruins everything around me. Cash is a terrible card. Terrible card. For starters, it's gold. It's a poorly disguised gold. And gold is a terrible card. Don't buy golds. Cash is a gold that then attacks your deck with 2 more junk cards on top of the gold. There's such strong 5s here. Mastermind and Torture. Yeah. Oh no! Stop it! ThinkLauren, don't follow her example.
ThinkLauren, think.
No. Oh. I feel like this is this I have this problem where like my opponent does something like, oh, it must be good. They must have a reason for it. I guess I'll copy it too. No, there's no reason to buy Cash here. Please don't.
Yeah, in the last match we commented, we were talking about that like psyching your opponent effect, where you buy something and your opponent goes, well, if I buy into the same opening, we're at least on like the same footing.
Yeah.
And so you end up just both doing something nonsensical.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's such good cards to gain here. The engine here doesn't need money almost at all. Probably never buys a money card outside of maybe some silver early on. The engine wants to play a bunch of Captains as Inventors and Inventors themselves, gain a whole bunch of cards. Once you have Mastermind and something that can do cost reduction, the game gets pretty out of hand.
Yes. Going back to something I mentioned briefly earlier and had not fully explained, the buying of the province. I would not, in my wildest dreams, click on province in this kingdom. Like under no circumstances is that just acceptable in the slightest. The reason is just because like everything about this kingdom is really, really, really strong. But it's also like really rickety. Like your trashing isn't phenomenal. You can trash coppers with Moneylender, but you have no good way to get rid of the estates and any curses that you get. And so your deck's going to be like, it's a little bit unreliable, But once you get it set up, it's going to be really, really good. You've got excellent draw, it's just expensive draw with Torture. You've got Villages, Mining Village, and Captain. You got Mastermind, which is just great. And once you get all that together, your deck's going to do so much. It's going to be able to like attack your opponent like 5-6 times in a turn. Play like multiple Torturers, give them all the curses, play a bunch of Swindlers, and just like destroy their deck. And then you can play a lot of Inventors and gain tons of stuff. Like, there's no plus buy here, so you can only buy one province per turn. But you could, like, Mastermind a Captain, play Inventor, like, 3 times, and gain 3 distant lands. And that's more points than a province. And so if your deck comes together, it's just going to do so much per turn that it's, like, it's going to just crush whatever they do if their deck isn't at that level. And the first one to do it, and this is true of like Torture, it's true of Swindler, it's just true of like strong individual attacks in general. The first one to do that is just going to shut their opponent out of the game. And so like if you take a province and you think like I'm going to score a little bit now and I'm going to eventually get around to building an engine, your opponent's going to beat you there, and then your deck is just going to get destroyed and you're never going to get there. Oh no, ThinkLauren, don't buy gold. Yeah, insert rant from previous game. Gold is a terrible card. Please don't buy it. Please never buy it. Really, really bad.
And here you even have maybe not the best, either the best or second best 6-cost card.
Oh wait. Yeah.
That's why I said or second best. Because Goons is probably stronger than Captain. But either way, Captain is a phenomenally strong card. And here it is so good with things like Swindler, Inventor, and Torturer to play.
Mac Attack ask what would you do for money? Inventor.
I mean, I don't want to add any money cards to my deck. If I literally need virtual money, I can play things as Swindler to hit price points. But yeah, I'm planning on trying to play almost everything as Inventors.
Yeah, you can only buy one card per turn here. So you need next to no money. Early on, just the coppers in your moneylender are going to be more than enough money. Eventually, maybe playing like a Swindler or two could be helpful. But like, if you've played a bunch of Inventors per turn to gain stuff, everything's going to cost like 0 anyway, and then your 1 buy per turn isn't even going to require that you have money.
Mm-hmm. And Mastermind is so powerful. I mean, it is a King's Court. So combining that with a card like Inventor that both is a gainer and a cost reducer means that you could be adding a bunch of really good cards to your deck very quickly, and also that once you've built up, you can pull off a big turn, get a whole bunch of green cards. There is a good reason to click on Province here, and that's when it says gain a card costing up to 4.
Yeah. Yeah, realistically, I would not be surprised if a province never got taken here, like given optimal play from both sides, because the engine is so strong, your incentive is to build really fast, and then what will inevitably happen is whoever kind of beats their opponent to the punch can end the game on 3 piles very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna
Mining Village, Captain, and something like Curse or something like that.
Well, Curse is gonna fly because once you've got some Masterminds and some Captains and Torturers, Captains can start playing Torturers once they've played an Inventor. Curses are just gonna go. So I could see this game sort of 3-piling very quickly between Inventor and all its tricks and Torturer just shoving curses into my opponent's deck. And that's another reason why I really don't want to do something like buy a province early. It's because I need to have the deck that is going to get set up faster to give my opponent all the curses before they start cursing me.
Buying an early province, I think, is actually worse than buying a gold.
Yeah, I'd agree. The gold at least does something for your deck.
It's at least shiny. You can look at the pretty art.
It is very nice art.
Yeah, compared to Province, which I think is a lot more mundane. It looks like a putt course.
It's a little landscapey. Gold's like very cool stacks of bricks. Like
look at that
cross hatching. It looks great.
Yeah, I like the treasure art. I'm pretty sure that this is like the newer treasure art, isn't it? I don't even know what the old treasure art looks like, but I like the new one.
I believe so, but I'm also a Dominion baby, so I don't know old stuff. I only play.
Same. I didn't play in the Dark Ages when we had first edition cards.
Yeah. Well, I actually did learn base with first edition, but just because that happened to be the set one of my friends bought off whatever random Craigslist or Facebook market they got the set from for our board game night. But I don't remember most of first edition. It wasn't until I started playing online that I actually really got into it.
First edition was already gone when I started playing, which was in late 2017. So sometime before then.
So, both of these decks have been playing pretty straightforward money-ish kinds of things, and so they're going to definitely have a little trouble closing out here at the end. Because they just don't have a good balance of cards. They've added a bunch of green cards that haven't done much to improve their decks.
Oh no!
No.
This is the same mistake that you were pointing out earlier, which is there's a Mastermind and a Moat in hand. If you play the Captain as a Mining Village, you get to have your cake and eat it too. You play the Captain and also play the Mastermind. Now, one thing worth talking about here is, in this kingdom, I think we've had them at least move a little bit more in the direction of the engine than the previous kingdoms. Like, they clicked a decent number of action and draw cards. They played with some Torturers and Captains and Mining Villages, but they're also buying golds and caches and so forth. And this won't be true for every kingdom, but I think for a lot of kingdoms, that awkward middle ground of where you do a little bit of engine, a little bit of money, is often really worse than doing either. Like if you were to rank them,
it would lose to money.
Yeah, like if you were to rank the strategies, like consistently playing an engine, number 1, playing very simple big money thing, distant, number 2, and then like below that is the like sort of like half and half thing most of the time. Because like you're getting sort of most of the worst aspects of both decks. The benefit of a big money strategy that just buys treasures is it starts scoring soon. You don't need a lot of cards to do that. And so if you add in like a few villages, a few torturers, and a few treasures, you're adding extra cards that are paying off more slowly. Like a village does less for your deck than like a silver does if you're playing money. And the benefit of an engine is that deck control allows you to do a lot of stuff per turn consistently. You find your actions and draws, you line them up consistently, play every card in your deck, and then you're like reliably laying down like torture attacks, swindler attacks, and so forth. And if you're adding a little bit of draw and then a little bit of treasures, you're not ever really getting that deck control needed to actually do all the good stuff an engine can do. And so you're kind of in like this awkward no man's land where you're not getting either of the benefits.
Not quite sure what your question is, Mac Attack. So, for instance, something like Smithy Money will take, I think, around 14 to 15 turns to get 4 provinces. So in the mirror, they would be closing in around 15, 16. They start duchy dancing.
Now, you can't really use that as a baseline here, though, because they're both getting attacked by Swindler and Torturer and so forth. And so you can't compare it to, like, how fast does Smithy Big Money get X amount of provinces? Because Smithy Big Money isn't getting hit by Swindlers and Torturers every turn.
Just something like one Torturer being on the board, being under a militia attack every turn, essentially, will slow money down tremendously. And obviously Torturers can stack, Swindler can wreak havoc on everything. There's a lot more you can do than just play one militia turn here.
Yeah. So this looks like it's ThinkLauren's game. I'm not seeing how ditastrutt overcomes this point deficit this late in the game.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh yeah, Steam OK points out ThinkLauren will win
Pop the
with
village.
this current hand. Yeah.
Yep.
Kill it. Kill the mining village.
Pop that village. Dita disconnect.
Yay,
we got it.
All right, we got the win. All right, so that's 2-0 for ThinkLauren. No, wait. We played more than 2 games.
I have no idea.
I don't know what the score is.
I have no idea what the score is. 3-0 says Team OK.
Okay, I'll trust that. I'm so terrible at that.
It's impossible, I've realized, if you're sufficiently focused on the games themselves and trying to commentate them, it makes it impossible to remember like the overarching structure of what's going on.
These two are playing rapidly.
Yes, this is very quick. I would recommend both of them. Try playing while sitting on your hands. You don't have to click this fast. There's a very lenient timer in this game. I think you'd both do a lot better if you just took some time to think through your moves a bit.
Especially early in the game. Like, the opening is a great time to think.
Yeah.
Did they change play order? I wish I knew.
Let's see. ThinkLauren was player 1 last game and is player 2 now, so it looks like it.
It's appearing to me that Dita has gone second twice and first once, just based on the fact that they're, in case they're unaware, your name in chat will be red if you're player 1 and blue if you're player 2. And so just eyeballing the chat, it looks like Dita was player 2 for 2 of the games. So this will have evened it out. Now they've gone first twice each.
Okay, so
oh no, treasure map! Don't do it! Please don't do it! Don't you dare! It didn't work last time.
There's this card called Tournament you can open.
Hey, all right, yeah, that's a much better open. I think
Hoggers for sure.
I think Tournament and Ironworks are the two things I'd be thinking about opening with here.
Ironworks also makes sense. I can definitely see wanting to get a lot of certain 4-cost cards.
The nice thing I think you can do with Ironworks is if you use the Ironworks to gain a hostelry, and then you can discard all the coppers in your hand and get tons of horses, which is a good way to accelerate your deck really fast.
Yeah, and that kind of spiking goes really well with a card like Tournament that loves when you can spike an early province. In pretty big contradiction to what we've been talking about so far, which is why some people really don't like Tournament.
Oh, but I hate Tournament. It's on my dislike list for a number of reasons. But one is because it's one of the few cards in the game that really does push you towards getting an early province, because obviously it gets a lot better when you have a province, and gets a lot worse when your opponent does. And so Tournament often creates this awkward rush to hit 8 as early as possible, which can be very, very random in nature based on draws. But yeah, in this kingdom, actually, getting an early province is a quite reasonable thing to do because it pairs well with the Tournament and gets you some nice, strong prices. So let's see how they opened. Tournament Silver is, I think, a very reasonable opening.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm not a big fan of the Vault, I don't think. It seems weaker than Patrol as far as draw goes, or even Tragic Hero might be better as well. Vault draws you net 1 card. Tragic Hero and Patrol are drawing you on net 2 cards. So twice as much draw for the same amount of card. Oh no. So we've seen a singular treasure map bot on turn 4.
Treasure map, I guess it's very compelling for newer players. I didn't realize how much of a trap card it was.
I don't think I ever had my treasure map phase. Like when I was a new player, I think there were different cards that I had a weird fascination with. But it does seem like a lot of newer folks really love this treasure map card. Like, oh, 4 golds, that must be so good. Wait. Are you suggesting that I was in my infancy Monster Cheese when I liked Crypt? No, my love for Crypt as a card is undying and holds true to this very day. But yeah, Treasure Map is obviously not good. It's just also really slow.
Yeah. Like I was saying a couple games ago, it has a place when you have deck control and there's not a better way to add payload. But in general, it's a very niche card that you probably shouldn't be playing with.
And then ThinkLauren is just buying golds, which is questionably any better.
So here again, we have the things we need to build an engine. We have Hostelry as a village, and Walled Village also as a village. But Hostelry is way cool because you can get a ton of horses. We have draw cards and those 3/5s in the top of the board. Patrol, very reliable draw that can grab green cards, which can work with Tournament. Vault lets you turn draw into money, which can be useful. It's only a moat rather than a smithy though, so it has that trade. And then Tragic Hero, your top player's favorite card, gives you the plus buy, can also give you treasure. You have to manage how many cards are in hand and when to play them. It's a tricky card, but is quite a good card.
Yeah.
So you have what you need for an engine here.
Yeah.
And then you have Tournament.
Yeah, so what I would describe as a good strategy here is, like I was mentioning the Ironworks Open to do the Hostelry stuff early on, but I think Tournament Silver is totally fine as well, because Tournament Silver is good at hitting 5s. But I think what you want to be doing from there is when you hit 5 or 6 or 7, you're buying draw cards like Patrol or Tragic Hero, and then you add in like an Ironworks and use that to gain Hostelries for your extra villages. And then eventually, the way you're going to hit 8 here, I think, is if at some point you're going to draw like 6 or 7 coppers, I guess, and then you play Ironworks and you stuff your deck with like 6 horses. And once you've got a deck that's got like some draw cards like Patrol and then like 6 horses in it, you're going to be able to draw through your entire deck, and then you're going to hit 8 that turn. And then you can buy Province. And now you've got a deck that's still pretty thin. It's not full of treasures, which is going to make it a lot easier to line up that tournament in your deck with the province in your deck, because you're going to see most of your cards rather than a small subset of your cards. And then you can start getting, for example, I would probably grab, how do I even view them?
I would take followers first.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to view them. Here we go. Followers. I think, just you start attacking your opponent, giving them a curse and giving them a discard attack. and now they're going to have a hard time ever hitting 8 themselves and matching what you did. Yeah. And then later, Princess and Steed are also both quite good. Bag of Gold and Diadem tend to be like a distant 4th and 5th. I'd say normally it's like Followers is the best. Princess and Steed are like a near 2nd tier. Bag of Gold and Diadem are like a distant 3rd tier.
Certainly a good rule of thumb is just Followers first. Yeah. So you want to do something a little unusual here. Duchy is often good, but sometimes it's not. It really depends on the game, like the game state. So something kind of cool that you can do here is use Patrol to grab provinces out of your deck, and that pairs nicely with Tournament.
That's true.
So it's a nice little synergy. But in general, you probably want to build in a way like Jane Els was saying, where you get your deck under control. You've used the horses and patrols and tragic heroes to give you some draw, and you can get that first spiky province. You only need to really be able to spike once, because then you're going to be adding good prizes into your deck that'll let you build more. This is League J Mac Attack.
Yeah. Now we've had 2 province reveals so far. The first one was Trusty Steed. I think that's not a bad choice. I think it's inferior to Followers. But it's one that people often think is the best. I think they're mistaken about that. It's like 2nd, but it's still a good card. You're usually using it for +2 card, +2 action, which is like a Lost City, which is like a strong 5. The second one, though, was gaining a Bag of Gold, which seems really bad to me. Again, I think these players just like the concept of having golds in their deck a lot more than they ought to. I think DZ in chat a second ago described it as Bag of Junk, which is not particularly inaccurate. Again, putting more treasures in your deck reduces your control of your deck. It makes it hard to do the things you really want to do. You're not going to line up your provinces and your tournaments reliably if your deck is full of treasures. You're not going to play your Followers attack consistently if your deck is full of treasures. You're also not going to play your Followers attack consistently if you didn't take Followers in the first place because you took Bag of Gold instead.
So Vault here feels like a card I probably am never going to gain over Patrol or Tragic. But Patrol and Tragic are both at 10.
Yeah.
And only one village got taken, and it was a walled village. So they really don't seem to like the village smithy basic engine.
Yeah. Just adding a small number of treasures and a lot of action and draw is a much better way to consistently hit big price points than adding a ton of treasures. Because you're going to be able to maintain that control of your deck and draw to the few treasures you do have. So if you just have like 7 coppers in a tournament, for example, that's enough to hit 8. As long as you have enough draw to draw all 8 of those cards. You don't need to have 20 golds in your deck or however many.
Yeah. In general, you don't need much treasure in this game. You want to build efficient payload, but a lot of the time you only need $8 or $10 in your deck for most of the game until maybe the end when you're about to buy a bunch of provinces or something. You want to then add in some extra treasure or some non-treasure payload. But for most of the... Oh, what do we have here?
A kingdom that I'm sure is not going to be played appropriately. This is perhaps like the strongest, engineest of the kingdoms we've seen yet.
It looks like a horn thing to me.
Yes, this is very much a Horn of Plenty, mega turn, empty the entire province pile in one turn sort of thing. I don't think we're going to see that here, but I'll be pleasantly surprised if we do.
I had such a cool horn win earlier today where I cashed in a bunch of horns for curses.
Yeah. So to briefly describe what's going on here, you've got trashing with Count. You've got plenty of action and draw. Smithy can draw. Encampment can draw. Workers' Village, Bazaar, and Encampment are all plus action. Yep. And so you can draw your deck very, very easily. And then there's this card, Horn of Plenty. This is a very strong card. It's among the best payload cards in the game. Mm-hmm. And it strongly rewards building an engine.
There's a couple of these elite payload cards that let you have a mega turn where you can potentially take all the provinces or at least enough points that you just end the game right there. And Horn of Plenty is one of those super elite payload cards like Bridge and Bridge Stroll.
Yeah.
Even Inventor to a degree. But Horn really lets you play the most engine-y thing by just literally doing all your greening in one turn that ends the game.
Yeah. The idea is basically what you want to do is draw your whole deck, and then you have to have at least 8 cards in play, 8 distinct cards in play, but it's usually not too hard to meet. Like that could just be a copper, a workers' village, an acropolis, a smithy, a bazaar, a horn, encampment, whatever. I think I'm already at 8. But it's
I find I find most of the time when I'm building horn decks, by the time I'm ready to potentially cash in, you can check, and your horns are almost always worth 6 or 7 by then because you've just built an engine with a bunch of different cards in it. And from there, it's very easy to add in, like, oh, I'll grab a silver here off my horn for an 8th unique or something.
Yeah. And then once you've got 8 distinct cards in play, these Horn of Plenties can gain provinces. And so the idea is just to build a deck that has like, you should like, 5 or 6 horns is often enough because your opponent, if they didn't mirror you, has like taken a province or 2. And then you just play those horns, pop them all for provinces, and you've got all the provinces in one turn. And it's great because you never have to like bog down your deck with greening mid-game. You just keep building, and then score all of your points in the last turn, which makes it very efficient.
So Chad was talking about double tact. I don't think double tact really goes with Horn of Plenty.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the double tactician deck. To briefly describe how that works, if you have a good virtual payload, like say like Messenger is an example of virtual payload, where it gives you money during your action phase. A deck you can often build is where you play one tactician at the end of each action phase, so that your next hand starts with 10 cards, 2 actions, and 2 buys, which is great. The limitation is if you play that at the end of your action phase, you can't play any treasures during your buy phase, so you have to play with no treasures. And so it works well when your main payload is action cards. I don't think it's good here because it obviously doesn't jive with Horn of Plenty, which is a treasure card.
Yep.
Now let's look at their openings. So ThinkLauren opens Messenger for workers' villages and then a silver. It's okay. I don't think it's optimal,
I don't
but
really
it's fine.
I guess taking Workers' Village early isn't bad because of encampment.
Yeah, importantly, the Workers' Village is going to both of you, so it's like kind of a moot point. Like if Workers' Village is good, it's good for both of you. If it's bad for both of you. So I don't think you have to think too much about how good Workers' Village is to evaluate the quality of like a Messenger silver opening. Mm-hmm. The thing I'm looking to do early on is get a count so I can get thin early. It's the only trasher here, and I do want to make sure that my deck is really thin. An important thing with count is it just trashes everything in your hand. And so if you're going to trash with count, you got to do it early. Because once you've got cards in your deck that you don't want to trash, it's going to be hard to play your count and not trash your good cards. So like Dita has a 2/5 here, which is just much stronger. Encampment count in a heartbeat. Great opening. Whereas if I'm ThinkLauren and I've got the 4/3, I'm thinking like, how do I maximize my chance of hitting 5 so I can buy my count turn 3 or turn 4? I would think that's probably Smithy Silver for me, but Messenger Silver is totally fine. Buying Bazaar, though, turn 2 I think is a huge blunder. Bazaar is a good card, but it's a good village. It's good because it gives you plus action. This goes back to the thing we were saying, game 1. Turn 1 of game 1 is don't buy your action cards turn 1 or turn 2. Sorry, don't buy your villages, your plus action cards turn 1 or turn 2. Because you don't have terminal action cards in your deck yet that you could possibly need a village for. This Bazaar is just like a fancy 1 coin, which is just way, 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 way weaker than count in this context.
Yeah.
And then, oh no. I'm looking at turn 3. Actually, I don't like the gold. It's bad. It's really bad.
But it has it's justifiable because of encampment.
It's still a bad buy. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. You shouldn't have bought gold. Gold is bad. You need to count. The reason you open with Messenger and silver is to maximize your chance of hitting 5 so you can buy count. So gold is bad.
Yeah.
That being said, it's less bad here than normal. A single gold, 1 gold, is less bad than normal because you have encampment, which kind of benefits from having golds around. If you'd already gotten your count and you hit 6, I would rate gold buy here as acceptable. It's still really bad buying it before the count, but less bad than usual.
Wow, they just never mind. They had a golden hand. So they Dita picked up a horn pretty early, which initially I was not loving, but I suppose it can gain encampments and some other stuff pretty early on. So it's maybe not terrible.
Yeah, I think an early horn is not bad here. Now, just to conceptualize how important I think skipping count is here, you got 10 junk cards in your deck. The 7 coppers and the 3 shelters. Let's say you want to draw through your whole deck, which you absolutely do in this kingdom, because your goal should be to play a lot of horns of plenty. To draw through those 10 cards, you would need to get 5 villages and 5 smithies. So let's say like 5 workers' villages and 5 smithies. Because a workers' village and a smithy together net increases your hand size by 2 cards. Mm-hmm. So to get through those 10 junk cards, you have to spend, what's that, like 45 money on 4 workers' villages and 4 smithies. That's a huge investment. Alternatively, you just trash those cards with a single 5-cost card and then never have to draw 10 extra cards every turn. And so that early game benefit of trashing is so substantial in terms of maintaining deck control, making sure you can draw your deck reliably.
Yeah, and the thing with Horn of Plenty is you might be afraid when you're building engines that like your opponent's going to just buy too many provinces, they're going to outscore you, your engine will be too slow. With Horn, that's really not a problem. You can let the other player literally take 5 or 6 provinces, and if you can play 10 horns, you can just gain all the cards.
Yeah, you don't even need that many. So let's say they took 5 provinces. To beat that, you need to have 3 provinces, 4 duchies, and an estate. Your count can gain you a duchy. You'll probably have at least enough money to buy a duchy and an estate. That leaves you needing to gain 3 provinces and 2 duchies. So you need like 5 horns. And that's if your opponent got 5 provinces already.
Yeah. So the engine can probably pass a bunch of turns here and still comfortably win.
Yeah. I also, going back to something else that happened turn 3, Dita's turn 3, they bought Salt the Earth and Trashed an Estate, which basically was like buying 1 point. Remember, early game points don't matter. It does not matter.
And the early game is so important because everything snowballs out of those early buys. So giving up your precious buy, which is effectively what your whole turn is, you basically passed a turn for 1 point.
Yeah, like there's good cheap cards here. You could have bought a smithy. You could have bought a workers' village. You could have bought 2 encampments. You could have bought an armory, which could gain you more smithies than workers' villages. All of those are very desirable options. And then, oh no, turn 4, Dita bought a duchy. That is
inexplicable.
Egregiously early. Again, neither of them I think seems to realize the power of this kingdom, but like, if played properly, this is the sort of kingdom where like the entire game is going to be decided by like 1 turn. First person to do the big mega turn thing wins. They take all the provinces out from under you, and the game's over. And so having like a 1 duchy lead, or like 1 duchy and 1 point from your Salt the Earth and your duchy buy, is just, it's not going to matter. If your opponent buys 8 provinces, no amount of duchies is going to protect you from that. And so turn 3 and turn 4 is like, I cannot stress enough how much that is too early to be trying to score points. Your deck is not together yet. It's nowhere close to together. You're not at point scoring time. You've got to take your time and build a deck, and then you will outscore your opponent in the long run.
Yeah, and those early turns are foundational. All your other turns are based on those, right? We do things in the open usually to try to get certain outcomes to be like for turn 3 and 4, to be able to add some 5 cost and other power cards to our deck. All that, as soon as you skip a turn in that cycle, you set yourself so far behind in building.
Yeah. Like, I would not be surprised if, like, from Dita's seed, the 5-2 seed, you could end this game on, like, turn 11, taking 8 provinces. That's my estimate, is a good run from Dita's starting hand would get you 8 provinces on turn 11. They're now at turn 17, obviously much slower than that.
Yes, DZ. Lauren should have Assault win this turn unless they dud pretty spectacularly.
Yeah, so Lauren just needs to find 2 coins here to win the game. Uh-oh, well that's not a good first... Oh, just barely made it.
We found it.
All right.
So is Lauren up 4-0 now?
Yep. All right, Lauren found the win. Okay. It's 5-0.
It's 5-0.
Okay, 5-0. We went to our last game, and we only started like an hour ago.
Yeah, they were playing lightning fast.
Oh, yeah. Dita strutting right through this match. All right, what have we here? Ooh, this looks painful. So here, the big limitation is there's no good way to trash cards. In fact, there's no way to trash cards except that your opponent's Old Witch is going to trash the curses that it gave you. So your deck's never going to fully come together. That being said, you've got...
Oh, no.
Dita. We'll come to that in a second. Let's talk about the kingdom.
Old Witch looks so dominant as an opening here.
Has had 2 amazing 5/2s in 2 kingdoms where like 5/2 is phenomenal and is just throwing them away. So there's draw here with Old Witch. There's actions within encampment is both draw and action. And so you can definitely build a bit here. And this is the sort of kingdom where I wouldn't expect your average turn for you to like draw your whole deck or anything. Here you're going to want to sort of just like, you want to move in that direction. Like you want to do as much as you can. And so you want to add actions and draw towards that end. But like, given that you can't trash your starting cards and you're going to get hit with curses and stuff from Old Witch and whatnot, these decks might not fully come together. This is weaker than the last few just due to the lack of trashing. That being said, there's enough here that it's worth it. You know, hitting your opponent with a Relic deck consistently is painful. Hitting your opponent with Old Witch or Jester can be painful. You can be scoring points off of Plunder. So there's stuff here that makes it worth building a bit, even if you're not going to get to the like, I've got full control of my deck, I'm drawing everything every turn stage.
Yeah. So In is a spectacularly bad open because for one, it's a village, so it doesn't actually do anything until you have action cards in your deck. But on top of that, it's actually card negative as a village. So it's worse than just playing a regular village because you're actually down a card.
Yeah. Yeah, you think about it. Let's say you've got a 5-card hand with the In it, and then you play the In. You draw the In has left your hand, you're down to 4 cards. You now draw 2 cards, you're up to 6. You discard 2 cards again, you're back down to 4. So your hand size is smaller than before when you played it. Now, In will not be like horrible here in general, just because you have a bunch of junk that you're fine discarding anyway. But it is so much weaker than a bunch of other cards here. I would think Old Witch is like an amazing opening here. But like, even aside from Old Witch, Haggler, Relic, and Jester would also be like miles better than In.
Yeah. Why do we have a potion? The only potion card is Vineyard, which...
You're asking a good question. I don't have a good answer.
So, Vineyard can be a great way for an engine to, find some alt VP, because engines tend to build decks that have a lot of action cards in them. Vineyard can be a great way for the engine to, beat a deck that is trying to rush provinces. But it's a late game card. I mean, it's a green card. It's not something you want early on. It's like even if those vineyards were free, probably wouldn't take them right now because they're just clogging up your deck and they're not doing anything.
Yeah, Dita's got this problem where she keeps scoring like really early. Like that was turn 4 that she got the potion, and like if you were getting like an action card with that, like it. Oh, maybe I'm just presuming. Dita sounds like a female name. They are. If you're getting like a familiar or a scrying pool or an alchemist or something with that potion, yeah, early could be good. But obviously, if your goal with that potion is to get victory cards, turn 4 is just way early to start doing that.
Yeah, and I mean the idea doesn't make sense if you think it through a little bit, because is your goal to add victory cards or action cards which power up the victory cards? Because you can't do both at the same time.
Now, this has gotten me imagining, and I think that is a good idea. But what if you were to try to do like an armory supplies vineyard
power rush?
Rush. That can't be very fast. But like you get a bunch of armories, then you get the 8 vineyards, and then you empty armories, supplies, and vineyards to end the game. And then the idea is just don't play the horses. Just like let the horses accumulate in your deck to power up the vineyards.
That would be a lot more practical if they didn't get top deck.
Yeah.
It's a slush.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to imagine what would make early Vineyard make sense here.
I agree with DZ. I think that Old Witch is the best card on this board. I want to play Old Witch a bunch. I want to Scepter it. I want to give them all the curses, and I want to use it for draw.
Yeah. Now, we're at that obligatory time of the game where I have to complain about someone buying gold again. ThinkLauren bought a gold turn 6. Doesn't seem high priority here. Like, if you had a bunch of encampments, then maybe. Again, we've got another encampment board, so, like, you could maybe justify having a gold at some point, but, like, Old Witch seems more important. Relic seems more important. Even once you've got, like, a few Old Witches in your deck, In would be a good card to help you play those. And in a deck with no thinning, I think even if you had like an encampment or two, lining it up reliably with that gold seems kind of hard. So that's not a high priority for me.
Yeah. In response to your question, Malo, I don't think you're really playing like true money here. There's a lot of actions I want to be playing. I want Hagglers, I want Scepters, I want Inns, I want Witches. Yeah, it really is DZ. Sorry, I'm getting wires crossed. But yeah, so I wouldn't really say I'm playing money because I'm playing with a variety of action cards. And I'm ultimately not buying much money.
Yeah, I think Relic's a pretty strong attack. I mean,
I do too.
Like, giving your opponent the -1 card token is like -1 laboratory in their deck. And it's top deck, which is like the worst place to have it.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about earlier, changes to your initial hand size are huge, right? Because an engine is much more likely to find the cards it needs to start a big draw cycle if it has 7 cards than 5. In the same way, taking one of those initial 5 cards away, making them start with a 4-card hand. And like Mal was saying, even more painful if the village is in, makes it a lot harder for the engine to start and get going.
Now, something else worth talking about here is we have 9 silvers gained at this point, and I feel like that's way too many. The reason being, we got supplies in this kingdom, and I think supplies is a much better card than silver is. Mm-hmm. A way to think about this is like silver is like +2 coins -1 card, because every silver in your hand is taking up a spot that could have been filled with something else. Supplies is like +1 coin, but minus no cards. Because while supplies takes up a spot in your hand like silver does, it gives you a horse back, and horse is like +1 draw. And so, supplies is like +1 coin, and then neutral and draw. Silver is like +2 coins, -1 draw. So what's the difference? Silver would be like if you added a supplies to your deck, and a copper. Because copper is like +1 coin, -1 draw, right? And so if you had a card that's +1 coin and then neutral and draw, and you added a copper, you would end up with +2 coins, -1 draw. And so, is adding copper good for your deck? Almost never. And so if you think about it, silver is like a supplies plus a copper. I think it becomes pretty clear that supplies is just like a better card. A second way to conceptualize this is, silver gives you 1 more money, supplies gives you 1 more draw, and 1 more draw for your deck should be stronger than 1 more money, because the average card in your deck should in basically every kingdom be stronger than a copper. And so drawing 1 more card in your deck, on average, should earn you more value than 1 money, if the average card in your deck is stronger than a copper is.
Yeah, your deck has to be pretty weak for an extra card to only have an expected value of being worth $1. These potions are very strange. I keep having my eyes just lock onto the potion.
The potion,
because there's not even plus buy.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
You can't use it to sort of passively pick up vineyards, which isn't good, but would at least make some sense.
Yeah, like this potion is now just kind of junking up your deck, because you either have to pass up on buying a good card here to get the vineyard, or you just aren't using the potion at all. Dita scores way too early. Why are we Dutchying now? Is Dutchy even better than Vineyard? I'm not sure Dutchy is a better card than just buying the Vineyard that we're talking about.
It's unclear.
I think a problem I'm seeing is, I don't know, Dita's strategy this game doesn't feel very, like, consistent or together. Yeah, cohesive, that's a good word. I like that. It's not cohesive. Like, it doesn't feel like she looked at this kingdom and was like, I've got a game plan, here's where my deck is going long term. Because if you're like, all right, I'm going to try to play with vineyards, then you're probably thinking, like, I'm going to take it slow, I'm going to build up a large engine that has a lot of actions and eventually score with vineyards over the long term. I'm not going to be getting early duchies. I'm not going to be getting lots of silvers. My deck is going to be mostly action cards and vineyards. If you're trying to play money, obviously you wouldn't be taking a potion in the first place to get vineyards because you wouldn't be having a whole lot of action cards in your deck. And it kind of feels like this deck is just like a hodgepodge of like stuff without like a broader idea underlying it. Team OK has pointed out a good thing. Oh, never mind.
It's not on this board.
Yeah,
but
Piazza's
it is a really
board.
great.
Yeah. Theoretically, if you had Citygate and Piazza from the earlier kingdom on the same board, that would be a great combo. You could use Citygate to top deck something and guarantee your Piazza always hit. Piazza being the project that like Piazza is the project that plays like an action card from the top of your deck, but does nothing if the card is not in action, and so you could use Citygate to make sure it's always in action.
Yeah, I've played it before. It's a lot of fun.
This is a pretty good time to be buying in, I think. I don't know the exact contents of ThinkLauren's deck. Well, actually, I can look now. But like Lauren is right at the bottom of a shuffle, which can be a very good time to buy an in. Because if you only have like, I think there are like 2 or 3 more cards left in her deck, and then you buy in, most of your deck's in your discard. So you can just grab like all the actions that are in your discard and just stuff them right into that like 4 cards on top of your deck. And then your next hand is going to be like chock full of actions. And so that's like the ideal time to buy in. I think in is usually not a particularly strong card to have in your deck, but there can be like occasional contexts where buying it is really good because of that that immediate effect from gaining it and then putting stuff in your deck, like to save a dead turn, for example.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons the opening was sort of egregiously bad, is they shuffled that in back in, which screws up their shuffles.
Yeah.
And yeah, like DZ is saying, there is good alt VP on this board between, vineyards and tower with plunder sitting under there. So it definitely would be possible, I think, to catch money pretty easily with an engine here.
Yeah, like if my opponent was I guess playing the attacks as infrequently as these two are, I think you could actually plausibly get deck control or at least come close to it, like adding in a bunch of ins and old witches to draw through your junk cards, and then not adding a whole lot of treasure, like 1 relic, and then otherwise my payload would be supplies because supplies is draw neutral, and then you don't actually have a whole lot that you need to draw through there. Like, I think a good deck here, just to describe it, like a bunch of old witches and inns would be like the main source of draw. Probably some encampments eventually, and then like add a gold or a plunder. Probably like add 1 gold while I'm gaining the encampment, so I can have something revealed to those encampments too, and then eventually add more plunders for payload. And probably an armory to gain the encampments and supplies and so forth. And then if my opponent provinces early, I might just plan on scoring eventually with vineyards and plunders instead of even trying to contest provinces. Also tower. You can also score with tower, which is good for the engine.
I have no idea what Miles' question is. Does plunder count she for Vi?
For vineyards? I think the thought process is there's some contexts where you might not think plunder counts as like an action, but it does. Because there's like a few tokens. Yeah, there's a few cards that count action supply piles instead of actions themselves. Tokens is a good example. If you put like the plus buy token on the encampment pile, that affects every card from that supply pile. And so your plunders would actually also get plus buy, not just your encampments. Or for example, populate, which gains you a card from every action supply pile. If plunder is on top of the encampment pile at the moment, populate would gain you that plunder. And so there's a few contexts where plunger actually gets treated in a way you'd expect an action to be treated. And that's because there's a few things that care about whether the pile that's gained from is an action pile, and technically the encampment pile is. But vineyard counts actions, and plunger is just not an action.
Yep. Lauren takes it.
Oh, that was a sweep. All right.
Yeah.
Fast 6-0. Lauren doing
I haven't
some thinking.
seen a 6-0 in a long time.
Yeah. Alrighty. Nice quick match.
All right. I'm going to go get a snack. Enjoy your unsalted pretzels and whatever else you can find.
Oh, yep. Peace.
All right.
See you around.
Yeah.